Hello, everyone. My name is Rohit. I am a senior lighting designer at this company called Arup, which do all kinds of engineering consultancy, and lighting happens to be one of those. So today, when it comes to lighting the underground spaces, there are four things that I want to essentially talk about. The first being how powerful daylight is, and the effects that it creates on our body and on our minds. The second thing being how people are at the center of the design of these spaces and the lighting of these spaces, and third being how we sort of choreograph this journey from the ground to the underground, which are relatively darker spaces as we imagine them, and then how does technology come into the picture when we are designing these dynamic environments that have dynamic requirements all the time. So there has been a lot written in the papers about how light affects you, the social impacts, the psychological impacts. A lot of it is actually scaremongering. It's studies that are taken out of context. It's studies that are sort of misinterpreted. But there is no denying the certainty that light does have an effect on us, and there is so much more research is needed to understand how it affects us. Like as a race in general, we have been used to living either in daylight, or we are used to living in the first form of light that we saw was fire. And it's only been last 150 years that we are now subject and exposed to artificial lighting. It's daylight and fire. Our attraction towards it is sort of ingrained in our DNA. So when you see an image like this, you know it is a sunny day, but you also know that the long shadows are telling you something. They are telling you about the time of the day. They are telling you about that you are probably somewhere in the north. You're probably on a winter afternoon. That's why there are long shadows. There is daylight is constantly talking to you in some way. And it is so deeply woven into our psychology. It is so deeply woven into the kind of spaces that we like and we interpret. And that there is a significant emotional effect on us. And the only mystery with daylight is that why are we not using it more? We know that daylit office spaces will lease at better rates. We know daylit spaces attract us more. We like them more. It's better for our health and well-being, but why are we not using them more? The subtle shifts in daylight conditions when there's a cloudy day, when it's a sunny day, they all make us feel certain emotions. They'll make us feel warm, they'll make us feel cold, joyful, depressed, whatever, but it does evoke an emotion. And at the center of all this are people. Like, we want to recreate the benefits of daylight in the spaces that we live in the lifestyle that we lead. And although I would say that we have always been designing spaces and buildings, and so would Christian, for people all the time, human-centric lighting is like the new buzzword now. We are all talking about it, but we have been doing it, at least in our minds and in our ethics, for all our design life. And so we have developed for so many years under daylight, and now there is research that daylight light not only affects how you see spaces or how you see objects and things, but also how your body functions. Like, there are so many activities going on in our body which are actually governed by how much daylight we are being exposed to during the day. Like, what time do you feel the most alert? What time do you feel the most activated to do physical activities? What time is your body ready to go to sleep? And all of that. And this is particularly important as we consider the environment for humans underground. And that is what the journey to going underground is all about. It's about going from these relatively bright spaces that we call our streets and plazas into spaces that are underground. And the most impact it has is obviously our eyes. And this is a study done by a research student about comparing the eye to the lens of a camera. and it's the aperture size of our pupils which basically allow us to see spaces, and we need to give it a certain amount of time to adjust to these changing lighting conditions. So it takes you much longer to adjust from going to a brighter space to a light space, but it takes you much shorter time to go from a darker space into a brightly lit space. And is technology really the answer? Which is what it brings me to, where uh, the shift to LEDs has now allowed us to change the way we control light. It has become quicker. We have so much more control. We will talk in a minute about one of the projects where we are trying to mimic daylight through artificial sources. There are now technologies where we can even integrate LEDs which can exactly replicate not only the color quality of daylight but also the spectral quality of daylight. So it pretty much has the same kind of energy and same kind of wave components in it. And there are also other technologies which affect our subterranean world with how lighting is connected to the other parts of the building, like how it is connected to the retail environments, how lighting knows that you are in a certain location, how light fixtures can tell you that you are in a retail environment, you are going to cook Mexican for dinner, and it will plan a route in the supermarket for you, which will take you through all the grocery list that you need for a Mexican dinner. So, talking about some of the projects that we have done, where we talk about how we integrate daylight into our spaces. So, this was the first. This was one of the first ones which we did about how there are passive ways of getting daylight into our buildings, how there are active ways, and then there is a combination of both active and passive. So, what we started with here was a research project in a way, which is this is one of the derelict train lines in New York City, which is not being used right now. And for those of you know what a success story the High Line has been, which was also a derelict train track converted into an elevated park, this is a derelict train track underground, which led to the transformation of this into something like this, which is called the Low Line. So how do we create spaces underground, which look like a park sometimes, like it's sort of pushing the technology to its ultimate boundaries. And this is a prototypical experiment which was done for generating funding for this project, where it's pretty much basically there is a very sophisticated system to track the movement of the sun in the sky, and there are a number of reflectors on the street which take all of this light from the sun, and they sort of redirect it through a set of mirrors, and then it becomes a massive funnel which then disperses the light into a much larger floor space down below. And then there were a series of mock-ups and experiments, and we were playing with so many materials and all of that. And this was basically open for people to enjoy for about 4 months, so that they could get more funding for this project to see its reality. And while this is not always practical, it's an experiment. It's technologically very intensive. It's financially also very intensive. But there are also other efficient ways of bringing in daylight. And it doesn't mean that we completely give up on daylight, but it's all about how do we embrace the dark while we maintain a certain connection to the sky, while we maintain a certain connection to the ground. And it's not about lighting the platforms, or it's not about lighting, bringing a certain level of light inside the space, but it's about choreographing the space to empower that connection to the outside. And so these are some of the skylights which we designed for the metro station in Cityringen in Copenhagen, Denmark. And these have basically mirrored surfaces around the openings. So what the size of the opening is, the perception is that the opening is actually about 4 or 5 times the size of the actual opening because of these mirrors which are reflecting the sky outside. So it gives a perception of having a much daylit space, having a much stronger connection to the sky than is actually physically possible. So it's all about training your eye to see what it sees. And obviously there is always the supplement of LEDs and artificial lighting, which is also a very careful consideration to how your eye reacts to these darker spaces, and how do you supplement electric lighting to take the inadequacy out of the lack of daylight. And yes, technology is the answer. We sort of have found the answers, but we haven't found the question. What are we exactly looking for technology for us to do? So this is one of the projects, like not too far away. This is the Gagosian Gallery in London, where what we found was a completely non-daylit space, and what the curators of the gallery wanted to see was to experience the color of daylight when they are looking at these artwork. So the idea was to be able to exhibit the artwork in the environment that it was created in. And so what we did was we created artificial skylights in the ceiling, and they have a usual LED panel behind it. Nothing really spectacular. But then what we did was we took a lot of measurements of how much variation in the sky are we seeing through the day, when during a sunny day, during a cloudy day, during a rainy day, snowy day, and then there is a device that is set up on the roof which measures this data in real time and talks to the lighting control system. And then the data is basically measuring the color temperature of the light, which is basically telling you whether it's early morning light, which is nice and amber and very candle-like, or is it noon light, which is very, very cold and very, very bright. And the lighting system is basically reacting to that. So this was just mimicking color temperatures, but now we also have a research trial going on in our office, which is this little device that I'm wearing here, which is able to not only mimic the color of daylight, but also the spectral quality of daylight. So you can create, if you know how light waves look like, you can create the exact wave that the sun ray looks like. And that is basically to suggest what kind of non-visual impacts can light have on your body, not just from electric lighting, but also from simulated daylighting. But then there is also, let's not forget that sometimes we don't want to pretend that a space is daylit, and we want to, as long as the adaptation of the eye is sequenced correctly and is choreographed correctly, it's okay to not pretend that there is daylight inside. So these were the oil tanks under the new Tate Modern that we found, and they were found just like they are seen in this picture now. And what we were asked to do was to create a lighting environment which gives it the quality of being found, like you accidentally went into the basement and you found this space, and there happens to be artwork there. So this is what we eventually did. It was just very, very basic, kept to have like a cave-like quality to it, and there is lighting just for safety and security reasons, but this was actually how the building opened on its first day. It was kept dark, there was just very little artwork, but what was more critical was that people were given enough time for their eyes to adapt when they go into this dark space and experience the gallery the way it was the way it was supposed to be. So it's not about how we direct the use of light to influence where we go, but help to create a profound meaning to our spaces. It's not about how we shape our buildings in the beginning, but also how buildings shape us and how they react with us. So that's it. Thank you.